The karakia and the oath. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, he akia nā te atakura, he hio, he huka, he hauhu, te hei mauri ora. Let us affirm today that we as councillors will work together to serve the citizens of Selwyn District, to always use our gifts of understanding, courage, common sense, wisdom and integrity in all our discussions, dealings and decisions, so that we may solve problems effectively. May we always recognise each other's values and opinions, be fair-minded and ready to listen to each other's point of view. In our dealings with each other, let us always be open to the truth of others and ready to seek agreement, slow to take offence and always prepared to forgive. May we always work to enhance the well-being of Selwyn District and its communities. We will. And should we start round two of opening the meetings with the karakia and the affirmation round the table again? I think it was quite good last time having a different person lead that. And should we go reverse order this time? Murray can go first and we'll come back round to Malcolm last. Next meeting? Yeah. Great. Welcome along everyone. Hope you've enjoyed your last couple of weeks between council meetings. There's been a lot going on for council during that time, which has included all the LTP hearings and deliberations, and so thank you for the time commitment, huge time commitment that's been involved over that time. There's no apologies for today's meeting. Is there any identification of extraordinary business that hasn't already been raised, David? I'm not aware of any. Great. Are there any conflicts of interest that aren't listed on the register that people would like to raise today? None. We move to the confirmation of minutes from the 12th of May meeting. Moved Alexander and seconded Lyle. Is there any discussion from those minutes or matters arising? All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. There was an item in there that is carryover of the matters requiring attention, which includes the reduction of speed limits and speed limit review, quarry setbacks, still expecting a report on the council fleet. David, I'm not sure if that's going to be touched on today or in Douglas's report or your report.
Mr. Mayor, there was one that's missing there that was not prohibiting heavy vehicles from Prebbleton, but actually heavy vehicles up in Tennyson Street Town Centre, Ralston Town Centre. That from the last time we had a roading report that was discussed. So that could be in addition to prohibiting heavy vehicles through Prebbleton, but there was actually, the request was prohibiting heavy vehicles who aren't making deliveries from Tennyson Street between Ralston Drive and Kidman Street.
Yeah, okay. I'm seeing a nod from the asset manager, so that can be included in that report to come back. Item 1 then, or the first report, is on tab 7. Did we move and second each of those minutes? All in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Get those minutes are true and accurate. Chief Executive's report is on page 20. And David, I'll hand the floor to you.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to start off with some very good and some very, very proud news in terms of awards that council has won, acknowledging projects across the district. And for the benefit of those who are live streaming or the media, I'll just actually read from my report. Our entry in the Tai Tuara, which is the former Solgum annual awards, the entry a world-class customer experience transformation project, which is the customer services area up the front, recently won the National Transforming Service Delivery category in the Excellence Awards presented in Wellington a couple of Thursdays ago. And the judges noted the council entry was, and I'm quoting from their notes, a highly transferable total transformation of council's public-facing services that blends digital transformation, culture change, and skill, knowledge-based development into a story with a particularly compelling before and after. To take just one example, before the transformation, 1 customer inquiry and 5 was answered at first contact and within the council. After transformation, 4 and 5 of those are answered at first contact. So the management team, Mr. Mayor, are incredibly proud of that one. Also, our sister city projects won 2 awards at their recent national awards. First one was the sister city of Taraja and Sulawesi Indonesia won 2 awards, and the committee, Sister Cities Committee, picked up the Best Local Government Award and the Best Project overall. So the 2 awards, the first one were for the Toraja visit to Selwyn in 2019 and the work of 3 Selwyn teachers in Toraja later that year in September. And the Toraja visit to Selwyn included observing waste management schools in Rolleston and Ladbrokes, Lincoln University, tourism marketing and horticulture businesses, and they stayed with homestay families. And again, these awards are a great recognition for the hard work that is put in by that committee. So again, huge acknowledgement, and hopefully we're in for a few other awards, and hopefully we've got good news to share with those as well. Next item is the appendage to the report on the development of Maori capacity to contribute to Council's decision making. That is on page number 27. And so if you just flick through to that, I'll go through the changes that we've initiated. So it's not a large policy, but it's a policy of recognition. And most importantly, it's a living policy, so one that is constantly in front of us and subject to change. So we talk about the coverage of the policy, the operational arrangements, starting with the Tiwai Hora co-governance. So largely those 2 sections are unchanged. On the right-hand column under the heading Te Taumutu Runanga, we have enhanced commentary to refer to the quarterly meetings that we continue to have, and also the regular informal conversation that we have with our 2 bodies. And obviously, as a result of our decision on Thursday of last week, which is to be ratified on the 25th, that will be enhanced as well. Mahanui Karateo Limited, we continue to run service level agreements with them. Used to be around, or specifically around district plan, but also just items of general nature. District plan review, we've enhanced to identify where we are at the moment, and that is one particularly that will continue to change as the district plan hearings evolve. And finally, we make reference to the NPS on urban development. So those are the proposed changes, and there is a recommendation adopting that. That's recommendation B, Mr. Mayor. Happy to answer any questions, but before the questions are forthcoming, I just want to repeat my opening comments that this is a living document that is constantly reviewed. Constantly means exactly that. Situations change, and the evolving nature of our work that we're going through at the moment necessitate that to happen. So happy to take any questions on that particular subject right now, Mr. Mayor.
Should we just finish your report, David, and then we'll come back to any questions? So anything on the local government rating for Whenua Māori Amendment Act, or the new partnership around building consensus?
So I've given some background in my report, Mr. Mayor, to the Act itself, which you will see has got 6 key provisions, and it's in the middle of page 22 that I'm referring to. So they allow, and in certain circumstances require, the local authority chief executive to write off rates arrears, statutory rates remission process, making unused Maori land and land subject to the legislation non-rateable, treatment of multiple blocks of Maori land that are used together, and allowing access. And it's really around utilising that land for future productive and residential use. The key paragraph in this part of the report, Mr. Mayor, is the last one, which acknowledges we have 21 individually Maori owned rating units and 6 in Maori tribal rating units. We are currently not experiencing any issues with rates collection in relation to those properties. The next item is for public information, and it's respect to 2 initiatives that we have launched to address the record numbers of building consents that we're having coming through at the moment. And I report a note that we saw a significant number, 372 building consent applications submitted in March. Bear in mind our average is around 250 and has been for the past few years. So the number dropped back in April to 264, but those are still huge numbers that we're dealing with, and along with some significant resourcing challenges that we are having not only here in Selwyn, but this is a national problem. So how are we addressing that, particularly to get back to the 20 working day statutory timeframe? So we have recently hired 3 new consent staff, and we've had a separate meeting with MB, who were in the building last week, just talking about some of the initiatives that we've put in place. We have recently met with industry professionals to launch a professionals partnership program, and that's been really well responded to. So under that, designers, builders, developers will be able to apply to become council partners, and that will enable them to apply. Should I say, once they join that program, they'll then be able to have their consents fast-tracked as long as they meet, and more importantly, continue to meet certain criteria. And the other initiative, Mr. Mayor, is we recently had a training evening here in this building. So 28 people turned up, and we've actually signed up 6 of those people, which is a huge effort. Also, big ups to the council, to the building sector staff who initiated that training evening. So comfortable that whilst, yes, we do have an issue at the moment, we're all over it, and the numbers are going to be tracking down. Just note over the next page that very few councils have actually got the capacity to run this sort of initiative that we've been able to do. The other thing, as an aside, is I'm chairing on behalf of the Canterbury Councils a working group reviewing our building consent processing, making sure that we're not each other's worst enemies by advertising and punching each other's staff, but rather what is a coordinated way to approach in terms of not only processing, particularly acknowledging that a lot of the builders and developers work across various different councils, so they should be able to benefit from a very similar process. Well, we've had our first meeting, second one is scheduled for the 9th of June, and culminates in a report back to the chief executives on the, forget the date, but it's the last Monday of June anyway. And finally, just some changes to the delegations manual, Mr. Mayor, as a result of changing seats.
Thank you for that overview. First of all, we have Councillor Alexander and then EPR.
Two questions. Thank you for your report. On the development of Māori capacity policy, which party is responsible for consultation with Māori who aren't members of Ngāi Tahu? Is it our expectation that will be done through the local runanga, or council will do that separately?
Our initial engagement is always through Ngāi Tahu and the 2 local runanga. And then, and I know that that's where Shane's going to raise that issue as well, is that what is our role and responsibility in terms of wider engagement? And those questions are coming through in the representation review as well.
So I mean, that is the question. Is it that we expect that the local iwi will consult with other Māori in Aotearoa, or is it our responsibility? It's not clear from this where it sits. So I'm happy to leave that question there.
Well, it's not really a question that needs leaving there, because the Local Government Act clearly says that it's council's responsibility to allow all Māori to have development and contribution opportunities within local councils. So the Resource Management Act is a lot tighter on that and talks about mana whenua. The Local Government Act is tangata whenua, all Māori. So that is our responsibility. We will continue to work with Te Rūranga Ono Tahu on that, and particularly with Taumu Te Rūranga, but our scope has to be wider than just working with mana whenua.
Then in which case the policy is inadequate, because it doesn't reflect that.
As I say, this is one of these evolving things that we will continue to take into account, and I think some of the things coming out of the representation review will end up being added into this as well.
And my second question is around policy RS 402, just for clarification, where it says the regulatory manager and the team leader animal control have a delegated power, is that jointly or separately? Do they both have to make the same decision, or can one of them make the decision? It's not clear from the policy whether it's a joint decision or a separate decision.
They do that separately. Yeah.
Okay, well, that could be possibly an amendment to the policy to clarify that.
Just to add one word. Thank you for that.
Next one, Shane.
Ai, ka tangi te titi, ka tangi te kaka, ka tangi te huki a hau, ti hei baudi gora. Ngā mana, ngā reo, e rau koro matua, Sam, kau whakahaere, David, kaimahi, rangatira o Waikirikiri, tēnā koutou katoa. E rau mana whenua, Ngāi Tahu, Ngāi Te Rū Hiki Hiki, Ngāi Tua Uriri, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ngā mihi, Mark, you've raised a point and you've kind of beat me to the kōrero there, and what I'm really proud of is the fact that we've discussed that, David, it is a living document. Sam, you've also discussed that it's a journey that we're going to take together, and and I really commend this council for saying that for a start, but also the raised awareness on tangata whenua and the difference between, but also we are the same people. And I think as a council and underneath, in accordance with the legislation, all Māori, we're really beginning to see that now, and I'm very proud of that fact that we're all on this journey together, and that as a council we'll be looking at introducing into the development policy the inclusion of all Māori, because as we've seen around this table in my short time, there is value in tangata whenua view at this table. So what I'm really proud of is the fact that we're having that kōrero now. It's lifted, it's within our scope here now today and forevermore. And David, I'd like to impress upon you again that this is actually adopted into our Māori development policy for all Māori living here. Kia ora.
Kia ora, sir.
Amihi.
Mine isn't quite such a deep comment. It's more along the lines of, I remember mentioning this before and it's still there. We have a lot of misspellings in this policy. There are a lot of macrons missing and it does change the meaning of the words. So, Waitahu, Runanga, Rohe, Ngati Mamoi, Waitaha. There is no iwi called Waitaha, there's Waitaha. And if we're going to give Māori respect due, we should at least be spelling these words correctly.
Yeah, noted.
Mover and seconder for David's report, Ipeha and Alexander. Any further comments? All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. The next item is Plan Change 71. It's on page 30 of today's agenda, tab 8. And it's a decision on how to consider the private plan change request from 4 Stars Development Limited and Golds Development Limited. Recommendation that in respect of Plan Change 71, the operative Selwyn District Plan lodged by 4 Stars Development and Golds Development resolves to accept the request for notification pursuant to clause 25(2)(b) of the Resource Management Act. It's the same process we've been through with these other ones. Thank you, Grant and Murray. Moved and seconded. Is there any further comment on this? Grant?
Just some advice from the staff. I suppose there's nothing extraordinary compared to the other NPSUD applications we've received. Jocelyn, this is much the same.
At the front. Okay, let's clearly say that us accepting this is not us confirming that this is our desire for the end of it, but it's the start of a process for consideration through the Resource Management Act. And welcome to the table, Jocelyn, if you'd like to answer Grant's question around anything unique in this that isn't in some of the other plan changes that you'll be considering.
In terms of process, no, there's nothing unique about this. It has come in through the opening through the NPSUD and is being managed in the same way as all the other plan changes that have occurred through the same process. And yes, resolving to accept is only a process decision. So.
Yeah, just for those who are listening who may not be so au fait with the RMA jargon, it's the National Policy Statement on Urban Development is what we're referring to. And I guess there is one unique feature. This includes a deferred zone where the applicants are hoping that the airport noise contour will be reduced, and they've deferred the zoning under the airport noise contour, which may or may not be reduced by a process yet to happen.
Correct.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, declare it carried. Thanks, Jocelyn. Item number 9 is looking at the use of the Public Works Act 1981 as part of the Upper Dawson's Creeks 27 Hamptons Road, Prebbleton Recreation Reserve. Mover Grant, seconded Lyle. Any discussion on this? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, declare it carried. The next item is on tab 10. It's on page 65 of today's agenda. Change of classification of Park Recreation Reserve at Osborne Park, Doylston to Local Purpose Utility Reserve pursuant to Section 24 of the Reserves Act 1997. So mover and seconder for this report. Against, Mugford and Grant. Any discussion on this? Yes, Murray.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Just the opportunity to thank staff on their engagement with that committee, and I think there was value gained out of that process. So just an acknowledgement of that, and it helped get a better result, I feel. So thank you.
Cool, thank you for those comments. Any further? All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carries. Item number 11 is a speed limit bylaw 2018, proposed speed limit changes for consultation, and there's A through Z recommendations that sit within this. So there may be some individual questions that people want to touch on with each of those recommendations, or we can take them as a whole depending on what ends up being moved and seconded. I know that Councillor Alexander has got some comments he'd like to make around that, so I'll hand to... Oh, great. Come to the front, Mark. Yep. Mark, I'll hand to you, and if you want to take us through the report, that'd be great.
Yep, tēnā koutou kai konihera. Just the proposals are there. We talked at a workshop, so I wasn't going to talk on those too much. It's more the bit at the end. So just a bit of background. The new rule, which is out for consultation at the moment still, but when it's finalised and signed, it's supposed to be in November 2021, will be some changes in how speed limits are changed. We won't have a bylaw and things like that. So as part of that, council will have to have an interim speed management plan. So that'll be applied till 2024. And so in that is how we set out changes we're proposed to do in that period. And these changes that we're proposing at the moment are ones that we do under existing bylaw rather than waiting for the new rule and the new process. So that was it. But the last paragraph was there to get some feedback on some future changes that we could actually put into our interim plan. And so whether it goes through or not, that's fine. It can not be part of it. It can be a separate discussion, but it will need to be an interim plan for the council on how we're going to deal with speed limits for the next 3 years. After that, there'll be a regional speed management plan, which will feed into as well. So to have see how we're going to deal with speed limits over the Canterbury region. So that'll be all local authorities and RCAs and state highways within that, and on how our speed limits are going to do. So there are a couple of things that are mandatory, like outside schools. It's the government has said that it's mandatory to have lower speed limits outside schools over the next 10 years or so to have that. So our plan will be how, as a council and as a region, we're going to get that in place and what we're going to do with that. So that's that discussion. So the reason that just added that last portion on there was to get out there some feedback from residents, road users, ratepayers on those possible future changes. Whether it's included in this consultation, I don't mind. I thought I'd just put it there and be a good discussion, and has created discussion. So there's still a lot of guidance needed on speed limits and how we do it, particularly outside schools, but generally, whether 80 rural on until roads, 40 urban, all that sort of thing, there's still a lot of guidance needed from Waka Kotahi on that. And also had a meeting yesterday about the new rule. There needs to be a lot of information from a national level, from central government, on where we're heading and why we're doing what we're doing, not just get into changes to speed limits first. And this is why we're going to do it. So the road to zero, all that sort of thing, that's what it's based on. And that's just one part of it, as well as infrastructure and things like that as well. So that's just a bit of background to what's there. The rest of the information in there is pretty much as we've discussed before. So opening any questions now.
Thank you. Just touch on the consultation. Is this something that will just be for public consultation, and if you see it, you'll submit, or will there be something specific to the properties that adjoin these changes?
Well, normally it's public consultation. So under the current rule, you have to consult with organisations like police, NZTA, AA, New Zealand Trucking, as well as the general public. So put it there for ratepayers. Haven't done it for specifically the residents of those roads where the changes proposed previously or proposed in this one. There's no reason why that can't happen. They can be contacted directly. You have to have a discussion with Robin about the consultation, how we set that up and how we do it. So that can be done if that's the desire.
Yeah, I'm happy to move this. I've circulated to staff, and hopefully they can scroll up and show an amendment to that paragraph that Mark was talking about, that the consultation on future speed limit changes, be to urban areas 40k, school reduction to 80k from 100k on unsealed roads. The other portion of that be removed, and also the removal of permanent past schools, because I think that can be part of our discussion, whether we can use smarter systems than having a 24/7 30k speed limit past schools, which is not necessarily going to be supported by our road users, because driving past a school at 2 o'clock in the morning where it says 30k will be, most drivers will simply not obey that. And so I wonder whether, if we're going to go to consultation, we can consult about somewhat smarter systems. So that's, I'm happy to move the recommendation with that being the changes to that paragraph, because I think the further reductions on rural roads and rural unsealed roads, I'm pretty sure I could forecast what our community would say, and the answer would be no. And so I don't think they're ready, and I don't think the national regulatory framework is ready for that either. So I'm suggesting that we can save ourselves some time and bother by not doing that. I support 80k on our rural unsealed roads because we've only got a few that it's actually prudent or safe to drive any faster. So a blanket wide maximum speed limit on our rural unsealed roads would be sound. I do have a couple of other questions for Mr. Chamberlain. The first of which, on the maps on page 91 and 93, weren't quite consistent. Page 91 shows the proposed speed limits for Ralston South, and then on page 93 it shows Selwyn and Lincoln Roads. They don't quite match up, and so we just need to make sure when we go to consultation that those maps are consistent. We're talking about on the southern boundary of Ralston 60k on Selwyn Roads, the other on 93 it shows 80k. We just need to make sure when we do go to consultation the maps are consistent, please.
Yeah, that's the next step, and it was just, they were done separately, and there'll be all the changes will be mapped, and then we'll be doing the get the information out there. So yes, they will all show. I noticed those as well. So.
And I have a suggestion that we actually go slightly broader on page 91. The 30k town centre zone, that we actually be bolder, that we take the 30k limit on Tennyson Street to Kidman Street, Byron Street, because in the area north of what is shown on the map here, we already have a dentist, a preschool, a hairdresser, and a school. So it's already quite a busy precinct. And if we're going to make Tennyson Street 30 kilometres, why don't we take it right up to Kidman Street now? I'm sure there won't be many objections from the school and the school parents. And also the further stretch of 30 kilometres an hour will hopefully help achieve what I'd like to see, that heavy traffic stops using that as a through route. So I'm suggesting if we're going to go out to consultation, why not consult on the whole of that stretch of Tennyson Street for 30k? I was also going to talk about changes potentially for Prebbleton, but I believe Councillor Lyle has that one in hand, so I'll let him promote his.
Thank you. Deborah?
Thanks. Look, just on the recommendation that's up there, I actually agree with Mark with a reduction, right? From removing the 60k on our unsealed roads, but the way that that's reading is we've got a reduction to 80k per hour from 100 kilometre per hour on rural. Then we go to unsealed roads. That should be rural. Yeah, that's rural. No, what about a reduction to 80k on rural unsealed roads? What about our sealed roads?
That's the piece that Mark is saying. Do we want to cloud the community conversation with a blanket rule on our rural sealed roads, when actually what we want is some specific feedback on what we are suggesting in the report, plus maybe a conversation around the 100 down to 80 on unsealed roads. Let's just focus on one piece at a time, the unsealed roads to begin with.
Okay,
and then the next piece will be a further conversation should we wish to undertake that in the future.
No, that's fine. And I just wonder, with regards to the assessment that Mr. Chamberlain's put together, have you done an assessment of the quality of our roads and width with regards to a blanket rule versus some that may go down to 80 as an assessment? I'm thinking more of Gould's Road, and I'll mention Gould's Road because it is a narrow, it is a formed road, and it's heavily used, and there's been requests for it to go down to 80k. And if you're ever behind a truck and trailer or a cattle vehicle, I can assure you that their wheels are on the edge of the verge or even on the ground just to try and keep within the dotted line. So I just wonder whether we've done an assessment of the suitability of our roads to actually stay at 100, or do some of them need to be adjusted?
Just a quick response. My personal view is that most of our network should have a lower speed limit for that very reason. But I don't think we're in a position to do that yet. So, yeah, and people need to drive to conditions and that sort of thing. So.
I might be able to just fill in a blank there for you. The Safe Network Program by NZTA, they assess our roading network and assess what the risk is around what appropriate speeds may be and what improvements are needed. And it's a specific tool that they use. And as part of the speed limits that are suggested in the report, there are a number of those that have been identified with the NZTA looking at those very specific roads. Just a bit of context, they've been very pleased with the progress we've made around reducing a lot of our 800k roads to 80 and amongst in the greater Christchurch area and around close to Christchurch. And they've also identified some of those other ones that you're talking about in that same category. So there is some science to it. And I think that's the thing we just need to remember at this point, that there is some science behind these things with NZTA, and we continue to work through those processes with them.
Thank you. Shane.
Hi, kia ora, Mark. Thanks very much for your report. Happy to support your recommendations with Whakamaitaki Uru, Pōhau Road. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of speed involved in those areas, and there's a lot of residents walking out there. Love to also back up the reduction in speed limit from 80 to 100 in Leaston Road to Doyleston and Leaston. Some science behind that too, so they can speak to our residents. I just have a question from our residents. More and more residents are contacting me at the moment regarding road condition and speed within the townships, and what's the best form of communication for those residents to take when they have concerns on that?
Contacting council like normally through contact us, and they'll be forwarded on. So that's in relation to speed limits or the standard of our roads, or both?
Speed limits and standard roads, yeah.
And speed limits, I'd say there's a lot of work to be done to have a speed management plan for Selwyn for the next 3 years.
Yes.
Will require a lot more discussion around this table based on what we've been talking about today, the information that's there, and where we want to be and what changes. What the reason for that is, it reduces the consultation in the future. So if you're doing a change in the next 3 years, that is in accordance with the approved plan, and that's moving township boundaries out or putting an 80 in place, and that's what you're proposing to do. You don't have to consult on that. The consultation is part of that plan, so it just reduces that consultation stage. But if you're doing something outside of what you've got in that proposed plan for 3 years, you do have to consult on that, or go through the Regional Transport Committee, or do it ourselves, or through Waka Kotahi and do that consultation still. So yes, send in requests. We get requests on a regular basis about speed limits. Yeah. And it's normally about how fast other people are going, so please slow them down. So, which is pretty normal. That's just what we like. That's human nature.
In particular, it was Leaston Township, so I'm just wondering whether there's any plans to review that traffic flow through there at any stage. Only
as part of that 3-year plan for the speed management plan. That'll be part of that, and every township will be exactly the same. And it may be that we go to 40k speed limits as our default urban speed limit.
Thank you. Just finally, I'd like to support Mark in his recommendations there, but also support the Mayor in the delivery of that. Thank you.
Yes, councillors, you're probably not surprised at what I'm going to drop on you now. As you saw from the last week with the visitations from people of Prebbleton who are very concerned about traffic issues in the main street, as you're aware, we have 16,000 cars plus a day going through the township. And I'd like to move an amendment to M on our list. In the spirit of moving that amendment, I do realise that there is work in the long-term plan to change the speed limits on Springs Road, which is about 3 or 4 years out. To my mind, that is too far out. We can have a death before then. And I'm reminded when I look at our views and our visions here, our values for being Selwyn, and our purpose is to create a vibrant, sustainable community enabling a high quality of life by delivering smart and innovative services, facilities and infrastructure. And our vision is to have an unparalleled reputation for highly innovative delivery of service that make people's lives better. We're doing that through being a good human, working better together, be brave and thinking differently, and making it happen for Selwyn. And with that in mind, I would like to propose that M be broken into 2 resolutions. M1, the reduction to 40 kilometres an hour on Springs Road between Hamptons Road and the existing 50k entry to Prebleton north of Blakes Road. That's 1. 2, the reduction to 50 kilometres an hour, extend the urban traffic area from the current 60 kilometres an hour on Hamptons Road and Trices Road in Prebleton, which makes the basis of the original resolution. The reason why I'm doing that, as I've said, I believe it's time to act now. I believe that the argument to put against this will be a lack of signage and time to put things in place. I believe we can do things with paint. We can do things on the cheap on a temporary basis until such time as we are able to do something in several years' time. But I believe in the interest of the safety of the people of my community, it is time to act now.
As mover, I'm happy to adopt that as part of the recommendation, to save it being put as an amendment.
We'll just get it typed on the screen so that everyone can see. But if you're looking at a map, Malcolm, if people have got a map in front of them now, you're talking about the area that is the main road through Lincoln, through Prebleton, sorry, being lowered to the lower speed limit, but leaving the rest as the recommendation suggests.
Exactly, but we could always go for Lincoln too. I think they'd agree.
I should go for West Melton while we're doing it as well. But let's stick with what we're talking about, sorry, Prebleton, and we'll get the words up there. But is everyone, I mean, you can see the words, but you understand the intent of what Malcolm's saying. It's the main street of Prebleton lowering to that 40 limit, with the roads coming in still remaining at the lower 50.
Just make a comment on that. Personally, I don't agree with just doing Springs Road, but if you want to really be really brave and really different, why don't you reduce all of Prebleton down to 40? So the whole 50 area reduces down to 40 rather than just choosing Springs Road. If we're going to do it, that's just a matter of changing all the existing signs from a 50 to a 40.
Okay. Well, I accept your advice. I think very good point, Mr. Chamberlain. The problem would be how far back from the 50 areas are you going? Going all the way back out to Ellesmere Road, or how far are we going here?
No, extending Springs Road to past Hamptons Road, including Hamptons Road, from the 60 down to 50, but instead it's down 60 down to 50 down to 40, and all the existing 50 reduced to 40.
I think that's beyond the intent of the initial. I mean, Malcolm, my own understanding of this is to enable a safer through route for those that are on Springs Road, rather than lower speeds right throughout Prebleton, which could be something that we should consider, but that might be a jump too far for us in this meeting to consider whole townships being dropped to 40 Ks as one decision. So happy to hear what you've got on this, Malcolm, but I don't want us to take the meeting too far outside of what the scope of this current decision is. We may need to come back to it.
Bearing in mind that this is going out to public consultation, I think perhaps the main street to get Springs Road done, to my mind, is the golden aim at the moment. The side streets, yes, it would be nice, but to some extent they're a little bit of a sideshow. So I'll stick with my initial recommendation. But if the public want to come back with that in their submissions, I think that should be considered.
Yeah, just support Malcolm's last comment. This is going out to public consultation. You can put up an idea and see how it flies. I'd be really pleased if through the public consultation, if we not only got comments from the residents of Prebleton, but we also got comments from the people who used the road to go from Lincoln to Rosehead. And that's the advantage of going to consultation. You will actually get that feedback.
Procedurally, if Shane was to support this, we don't have to treat it as an informal amendment.
Okay, so let's just clarify that. Mark, you're happy with this being, the change being included in the original? Shane, you're happy for this to be included in the original? Great, so this now forms a substantive motion, and we have Nicole, Jenny and Sophie.
Thanks for that, and I fully support Malcolm's proposal as well. Just when we're talking about that that final paragraph where Mark and Deborah wanting the changes, I mean, really my understanding from you, Mark, is that this is something that was going to happen. And the issue we've got is when we put stuff out like this to the public without a lot of education, which you've said that the government is going to do nationally about these speed limits, where actually maybe it's sort of not the best way of getting feedback from the community unless we're going to do a full-on campaign out there about what the benefits of these speed limits are. I'm not saying I don't support it. I really do support it, and we've tried to get some of these speed limits put in but haven't been able to. And that's the whole frustrating thing about it, is this is being way too slow for what we've wanted as a council. But I'm just wondering on what we're actually going to have coming back to us and whether it's worth just even raising it, bearing in mind that we've got all these other speed limits that we're trying to change, and I wonder if that might detract from the message that we're trying to put out there.
If you want to comment at the end, Mark, maybe there might be a few other questions as well. So Jenny and Sophie.
Thank you, Mark, for the report. I just want to thank you for I&J for reducing the speed limits in Kirwee from 100 down to a 50, because I know that the community are behind that decision. So thanks for that.
Thank you very much. There's a whole heap of them in here, eh? I just wanted to support Mark Alexander's suggestion earlier for the change to N, I think it is, extending possibly the proposed 30 area of Tennyson Street. Just because otherwise if you're coming in from the southern end, you come in at 50, you go to 30, you go back to 50, then you go to whatever the speed is outside the school, and then you go back to 50. It's much easier to just change the whole thing. There's the school, the preschool, the dentist, and a car park coming in soon. May as well just do the whole street.
So just for the clarity around that, he's suggesting that it's from the roundabout or as soon as you turn off the highway and come past the intersection. You're not going to probably get up to 50 before that, but if we're giving staff clarity on what they're going to put out for consultation, are we suggesting it's the whole street or?
My recommendation was to Kidman Street because you're right, but traffic turning off an 80k highway into a 30k zone might be more problematical. But once they cross the roundabout at Kidman Byron Street, the whole street through to the current southern 30k limit, B30k, would be consistent and might have a benefit from our town centre planning of possibly discouraging those who are just using it for through routes.
Great. Okay. Again, it's for consultation, so we'll hear back from the community around what they think of that idea. Is there any answers, Mark, or things that you've thought about as we've been speaking you'd like to throw into the conversation?
The initial intent of this was to tidy up anomalies and build extras and things like that, and it's just got a wee bit bigger than that. So that's all. The things that are anomalies actually at the moment, we could go to Waka Kotahi and get the director to sign them off if they're generally in alliance with what the speed management guide is and the rules. The current rule, we could get them to sign off, but just in discussion with them, I said we've got those, but we've actually got some that are a bit outside. For example, the Green Park Huts one is one that could just be signed off because it's already there and it's been there a long time. There won't be any objection to it. But there was others that are additional to that. So that's why I put them all in for consultation. So say this for consultation, put it out there, we'll see what the feedback is, and that includes from Waka Kotahi as well. So I know they'll have a few views on it because, yeah, it's a real work in progress. Speed limit changes at the moment. So.
Okay, thanks for the conversation on that. I think we're clear with the direction that we're now going. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Thanks, Mark. The next item is item 12. It's a solid waste monthly update. Andrew Boyd is here. Andrew, come to the front of the room. Andrew, just start by saying thank you for the tour yesterday with councillors from ECAN who were keen to see around the waste management space. Yeah, your professionalism in showing that was important, and they left feeling like they had much greater awareness of what we were doing in that space, having recently viewed what Christchurch's operations had looked like, particularly around composting. So thank you.
Yeah, no worries, thank you. Two lights anyway. Look, really, I was just going to touch on a couple of things. The Reconnect project consultation has been going really, really well. We've had some really amazing and positive feedback. We're up to about 60 submissions now, which I'm not sure what we normally get, but I was pretty surprised. And actually really good suggestions and things that we can fold into the project. So really pleased with how that's going. Last meeting I was requested to include some images of the buildings, so I've included some of those in the report. Happy to receive any feedback on those. Really pleased with how it's going with the architect who's involved. They've really got on board with the project. That's Ignite Architects, and they're just fully embedded in the project, and we're all working almost as if we're one organisation. So that's going really well. Next, we'll be working on sort of some of the material selections so that we can, where pragmatically possible, select more sustainable alternatives rather than just going for whatever is typically spec'd. And just finally, there's a heap of work going on at a national level around waste-related things. So I just, at the moment, include a little section at the end of the report giving little summaries, little updates on what's going on. So my plan was just to continue to provide little summaries of what work is going on. So there's a lot going on with regard to product stewardship schemes. So the background design, government's been working with industry to develop the priority product stewardship schemes. So we'll expect to see more information start to come out about those over the next year. That's pretty much it from me.
Great, thank you. Also keen to hear from councillors around the usefulness of this report and its timeliness. So wondering, at the moment it's a monthly report, but maybe that could be bi-monthly, just thinking about the numbers of changes that are in there and the request on staff to have to produce the report. There may be enough just to slow that down a wee bit, but happy to receive some feedback there. Firstly, Nicole, Grant and Shane.
Thanks for the report, Andrew. Just when you're talking about using sustainable materials is what you're looking at for these buildings, I assume you're including recycled materials under that as well to use?
We hope to, but it's a very tricky area because of engineering standards and things like that. So we do intend to with the fit out inside, but the structures are really, really simple. So they're likely to remain, we're looking at cross-laminated timber and things like that inside the structures for the framing. But trying to incorporate old beams and things is quite tricky, yeah. But not saying never, it's a lot harder than I thought it would be.
Okay, so you have been looking at that, that's good. The micro enterprise units, have you had any expressions of interest for those as yet?
Not so much expressions of interest, more just support for the idea, and some suggestions around how the use of those might be structured. So between now and when those get developed, because they're sort of one of the later stages, we've got some time to sort of navigate our way through how exactly they might be used, and whether they're sort of used as via an online booking system, or we have sort of resident artist, or there's a few things like that we can start to feel out over the next period. So that was part of the reason for that public consultation, was to sort of get that project out there, and of course now people are popping up, and we're making some good sort of contacts and good networks. Yep.
So potentially you would take expressions of interest if there are people out there who were interested in looking at these.
Yep, absolutely. So as with everything on site there, we're keeping it super flexible, with the idea of not being locked down to anything in particular. So I'll never say never to having a discussion with anyone that's got a proposal. Yep.
Just reinforcing your comment, Sam, I was lucky enough to go on a tour with Andrew last month. I think Andrew, we went out there and had a look around. And not only has Andrew and his team done an exceptional job, but also our operators are. It might be a waste transfer station, but it doesn't look like a dump. They've got it exceptionally tidy and clean. It's a real credit to the operators, and I don't know how we respond that down, but if somehow or other they could be told that they're doing a great job by the council, that'd be really good, because it is exceptionally tidy down there. It's not, last time I went, which was a number of years ago, there was waste blowing all around the place, and because it is quite a windy site, but they have got it exceptionally tidy and looking really good. So on the reporting, from a personal perspective, I think quarterly would be ample.
Yeah, sure. I guess I'd support Grant's comments and sentiments around the reporting, but also the great job you're doing down there, Andrew. Thanks for partnering with the Ellesmere Heritage Club for the drop-in days. There's an increase in tyres, and I can see in the next part of the report that you talk about tyres and the stockpiling on those. What is the future of tyre disposal?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So the cement kiln in Auckland, in Whangarei, has now been set up to handle a lot of waste tyres, but it can't cope with all of New Zealand's waste tyres. So they are still being exported again to cement kilns. So homes do exist for them. I think the issue with tyre stockpiling isn't that there's a lack of homes for tyres. I think it's that it's greed and wayward contractors who trying to make a quick buck and make them someone else's problem. Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully a quick one. You mentioned in that same section as Shane was just referring to about product stewardship scheme. Was that just for tyres, or is there any information about the other possible materials that we're going to be stewarding?
Yeah, so there's work going on with the e-waste, but as well as the electronic waste, as well as the other materials that are in that list of, I think it was 7 products or product streams. The only one that hasn't kicked off properly is the plastic packaging one, but there's work on the container refund scheme that's well underway, with some interesting alternatives suggested by the glass packaging businesses, unsurprisingly.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, with the curbside pickups, is there any movement of expanding them outside some of the smaller areas, rural areas?
Yeah, so we do. Anytime we get a request, we do investigate extensions to routes. So we did one just recently. So yeah, we do it regularly. It's usually at the request of a resident, and then we do a study of the area in terms of how many houses we could link up, and then look to see if we can make it feasible. But yeah, on a regular basis, we make small extensions. Yep.
Thank you. Last week there's a provisional decision around doubling the number of waste days for Ellesmere and Melbourne, so the community drop-off days. So you're looking at the feedback we've had from our community and the support that they have loved council providing outside of the place here in Rolleston means that we can actually connect with them on site a lot more, which is going to be good going forward. So looking forward to seeing the timetable for that and how that's going to look. And I just wonder if so we move to quarterly reports. I think that's got consensus around the room. But thinking is the idea of pyrolysis has been floating around our council for a while. For what, 6 months ago, maybe you came and talked to us about a different solution. It would be good to have to be a district that is at the forefront of thinking about using resources sustainably and reusing resources. And I don't think that conversation is quite finished yet. And so maybe if your next report brings back the case for doing something, so that we can actually give you a yes, no on it, rather than it just sort of sitting and bubbling there. A bit more direction around that would be good. I think there was a containerized solution, H2 solutions that you brought to us, proven technology, meeting European standards, and will meet the demand for a lot of our plastics that we currently have, including all our farm bale waste and other spaces. So I think there's some key things that fit in here with us, but would like to consider that properly, and perhaps as over the next 3 months you develop that and bring it back as part of the next piece.
Yep, absolutely.
Great, thanks Andrew. Mover and seconder for receiving this report, Bland and Lyle. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Item 14 is a property transaction update. Currently monthly, and I think we'll probably stay monthly with this one, don't we? Oh, I missed one, sorry, transportation. Oh, Douglas is quick though, he was up. Transportation updates, number 13. Transportation update. Andrew and Mark. It's two parts to this report as usual. Thank you for the monthly report. This one I do think is actually quite good getting monthly because of the changes that go on, but again happy to consider whether councillors see there being value in the regularity of this, because it does require a lot of staff time to make sure this is prepared and updated ahead of time. So if there's a move to want to see this bi-monthly or less frequently, please speak up during the meeting. Now I'll hand over to Murray and Mark.
Thanks. Do staff get a vote on that? No. Oh. All right. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to undertake this monthly update. From my perspective, and I suspect for everybody else pretty much in this room, we've been preoccupied with the LTP and submissions and deliberations, and I've been no different in regards to working through those processes with you. So that's taken up quite a bit of my time. The other thing that I've been doing is in regards to working closely with the NZTA on the confirmation of our roading programs going forward, and I was very pleased through the deliberation process with council confirming the program as we've got set out. And I was literally on the same day messaging NZTA and telling them we're all good for our local share. You need to front up with yours now. Thank you very much. So they have got that message, which I was delighted to give them. Thank you. And the other area is in terms of our low cost, low risk program. Just to give you an indication, the current program is probably worth, I think, about $3.5 million over the 3 years. With what we're proposing, it now increases to around 11 million for the next 3 years, and that brings in the Safe Network program, Road to Zero projects, the speed limits as we talked about before, PT infrastructure, travel demand management in terms of the Greater Christchurch partnership obligations, and all the other range of smaller improvements that we do over the network and what have you. So again, a big shift change in there, and we have to make sure that we have all our I's dotted and the T's crossed with NZTA. Colgate, that's all now completed. Everything's gone through. So all those roads that were not roads officially are now under our control, and we can move forward in those processes in terms of how we then determine what we end up doing with them. So that's a good result, and I again appreciate the cooperation of the property team in terms of what they've been able to achieve on that front for us. The other area is terms that's been some work been going on is obviously the Rolleston State Highway Access Project, the New Zealand Up project, in terms of the corridor of State Highway 1 through Rolleston. And we've had some meetings with, when I say we, in terms of the project team, with Kiwi Rail to understand some of their issues, because they're a very fundamental part of how we deal with this issue through Rolleston here. And very recently, we've also been discussing working through all the various options in regards to the what could occur out there. And while we all have a pretty fundamental idea that we already know, in some respects with these business case processes, you've got to take a step backwards to be able to then take 2 steps forward in regards to making sure that everything's lined up from an NZTA perspective. I think it's probably worth just noting too that when we talk about this project and NZTA's involvement, obviously the delivery agency for this, but it is an NZUp national project under the wing of the Minister of Transport, and NZTA have recently reminded me on that basis to make that point clear. The other aspect in terms of that is the comms plan is being worked up at the moment, and when we get a bit more information on those type of options and how we're landing on that, then that will be put into effect, and we are probably going to be relying on the Mayor to be able to help us introduce the comms aspect to it, so that we can get people well informed right from the start, using our sort of messaging that we're good at. And the only other thing was the MRT, which we talked about this morning. I think Barry did an extremely good job in explaining it, and so I hope that's answered your questions in the meantime anyway, so that we can progress with that as talked about this morning. Certainly, as you can appreciate, there are some big dollars in there, and it's not decisions that need to be taken lightly, and it will require a partnership between local government and central government to be able to give effect to something of that nature.
Tomorrow morning, I'm meeting with Minister Wood, Minister for Transport, with the other mayors of Canterbury to talk specifically about freight and a follow-up to the work that was done looking at freight movements around Canterbury, and that's going to be followed by a meeting with the same minister, just with the GCP mayors and chair, to focus on some of the things that were discussed this morning and government contribution and partnership with that. So there's the things that we're doing locally are being received regionally, and they're advocated for nationally, which I'll let you know what the outcomes of those meetings are. Some of it will just be about having the knowledge of the work that's currently going on here. And I think I mentioned last time that at Southern Woods we're planning to host a celebration of the CSM2 project. We're just waiting to hear back from NZTA about their availability on that day, but invitations to all councillors will be sent once that has been confirmed. Andrew, just wondering, there was some comments in the media about the $60 million that we received through the NZUp program, and it was a national comment about NZUp running out of money and projects being at risk. Key part of that for us is through Rolleston, and our flyover. Have you heard anything about any changes to the availability of resource to make that happen?
Yes, I asked the very same question. We've got 2 projects under NZUp, and that's the Rolleston upgrade and also the West Melton traffic signals. From what I've been advised, there is no discernible threat, if you want to put it that way, to those projects. Everything's continuing as was already expected, and so, yep, it's all systems go. I think maybe the point being is that it's those perhaps much bigger, larger and expensive projects elsewhere in the country that are ones that are probably under more of the microscope in terms of, if track record's anything to go by, some of the cost overruns that have been experienced and could be experienced in some of those really big projects.
Thank you. The question I have, Andrew, and thank you for a good report. And I do like having this one monthly, because roading's an issue that's at the forefront of our residents' minds. Under 4.1, where you say we have to reformat and resubmit parts of the proposed transport program, we're not at risk of losing, funding on them. I'm just a little bit more to understand what that was all about.
Okay, no, that's a fair comment. So a lot of my time has been spent recently just basically trying to get our program in the right format that NZTA requires. they've been changing some of the requirements on how we report that program and how we submit it online and through their electronic systems, from anything from manual spreadsheets to all their, as I say, online systems. And it's just, as I said before, a massaging of our approved program into the way they need to have it formatted for them so that they can then assess it and hopefully approve it.
Yeah, just the Colgate Road legalisation. I'd like to thank the staff, and I think it's a really good example where the staff went out really early, talked to the community a couple of times, explained what was happening, and it went through without any consultation whatsoever or any complaints, and everyone's really happy. But it could have gone really wrong, in my opinion, because there was a lot of anti-people to start with. So I think it's a really good example for things in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Just item 4.6, my memory of the last presentation is that you were going to contact Waka Kotahi and just make a statement that we were unhappy with that not being reviewed in that time frame. Has that been done, or is my memory of that? No, yeah, please. I don't think, you know, what are we now, 18 years since a review. I think it's well overdue. So, thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. I just want to ask if 4.6, which was council requests, next state highway review, is that looking at the extension of the motorway from Rolleston through to Burnham at all? Is that one of our major priority projects, and where's that sitting within the time frame?
No, I can see we probably might get a bit confused between the terminology. No, this is to do with basically, for instance, councils asking the NZTA to take over sections of their very busy roads or what have you and turn them into state highways. That's what that refers to. In regards to your specific question, though, that in terms of the NZ Up program, is what I just talked about through the section between the end of CSM2 and Duns Crossing Road is within the NZ Up program. The NZTA Safe Network program looks at the rest of the state highway and safety improvements to the south of that, and that's where we're trying to get those conversations joined up at the moment between those two projects.
Okay, it's just that the intersection across where we've lowered the speed limit down for people on the state highway really needs some sort of intervention other than just slowing down, because the amount of traffic that is crossing through to go around to the back of Lincoln now is, you know, it's peak traffic hours. The backup can be right down past almost to the water tower, believe it or not, on Burnham military camp. So, and that's on both sides. So I'm just highlighting, trying to get across, people do take risks.
Yeah, and certainly one of the biggest focuses of the Rolleston State Highway 1 access project is that Duns Cross and Walkers Road State Highway 1 intersection. That is critical to be able to get that upgraded into a standard that's going to cater for both state highway traffic and also our local traffic coming from Duns Crossing and Walkers Road. So it's a key focus area for the upgrade.
Thank you. Andrew, I'll need you to draft that letter. So we take it as an action from this meeting. I'll sign it, but it's just going to need some of the terminology and stuff expressed for the state highway review process. Work with you on that.
Yep, I'm happy to do that. As I last left it with NZTA, I asked them who should I write the letter to, but we'll confirm that.
Send it to the minister or to Nicole Rosie. Yep. Okay. Grant.
Yeah, since we're all in the same warpath, I brought that one up, and 4.6, I think we should be even more proactive than that and actually send a list of roads that we think should be upgraded. I think particularly with the explosive growth on the eastern side of Selwyn, there are some good cases, and particularly the export-focused roads as well from the dairy factories. So rather than ask them to review, I would suggest we put some roads on there, particularly even linking up State Highway 75 and State Highway 1 across the eastern growth areas would be one of the starting points, and the arterials to Christchurch, the new motorway. So I'd like us to be more proactive than what we are, perhaps rather than just saying have a review, here's some roads we think should be rezoned. My second question is, coming out of the LTP, was a number of people again talking about a lack of running metal on gravel roads. Is there an opportunity for us to do a bulk tender where we lump all our running metal into one, put it out for tender and get one tender to do it all? Does that have to stay within our roading contract? Because it seems like we could gain some efficiencies by doing our running metal maintenance as one big hit.
I think that question will be answered by Mark in terms of how that relates to the new road maintenance contract.
Yeah, I don't know how you get efficiencies in that. The road maintenance contract has got the quantity of gravel there, so they're doing it on a bulk basis anyway. So not sure how that would change.
Required to be done by our road maintenance contract, it can be tendered outside the contract.
Well, it's already part of the maintenance contract.
It's already part of the contract.
Yeah.
You can't tender it out.
Or supply that material. So, yeah.
I'm just wondering about the process for identifying those roads, and Andrew, maybe if you could just identify, you don't have to do it right now, but as part of this process around the letter, and circulate an email to councillors so that we can just have some, just understand what the roads that we're putting forward are, thinking about the exports, the heavy traffic particularly, and then obviously volumes would form a key part of our arguments.
Yeah, no, happy to do that. If I just may take a minute to elaborate on a couple of points. I think you've got to be aware of the fact that in the past when these state highway reviews have occurred, it's not a matter of just basically asking NZTA to take over roads. It's basically them also coming back and saying, well, if you want us to take over these roads, we may want to relinquish those roads that are already state highways. So there comes some risk in this process in terms of engagement and how outcomes may actually occur and may actually be outcomes that may not actually be that good for us. But I take your point, and I think the main thing is that the ones that I picked up on the two arterials in terms of Springs and Shands Road, and I believe Councillor Miller was suggesting the main link from State Highway 1 through, well, essentially Lincoln to State Highway 75 as being the other. The other thing that's happening at the moment is that the NZTA are requiring us to reclassify all our roading networks to a one network framework, and that actually looks at a whole set of criteria that establishes what hierarchy those roads should have. And we also need to be cognizant of that process in regards to how NZTA may view any requests, because there is a specific process around that as well at the moment.
Also thinking maybe about our most expensive roads. If we're thinking about what we're going to get rid of and what might get thrown back at us, thinking about what's expensive to maintain, including the criteria that you've got. The biggest one is around the dollars that we'll be saving if we pass it over. So having your eyes over that would also be helpful in thinking about links to State Highway 73, going both, anything linking to State Highway 1 obviously is into the airport and port. It's causing a lot of heavy traffic on our roads. So, yep, I don't know the time frame, a couple of weeks to be able to draft it up and flick around a draft list to councillors so we can see where that's at.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Mark, did you want to run through anything in your report?
Yeah, I'll take most of it as read. Just a couple of things is that the road naming and temporary road closures included in there rather than being a separate report. That was just wondering whether it's brief information there, whether you want more information, maps or anything like that. If that's enough, then that's fine. Just extra thing that's in there. Road maintenance renewals. So just nearing the end of the financial year, we're about 91% spent of our total budget for maintenance and renewals by the end of April. So we're tracking okay to meet the budget there. It might be a little bit over, but we're pretty close. And unsealed road assessments, since the report was written, we're actually at 95% of the network's been inspected now. So there'll be the results of that, the last round added to the previous, that will be in the next report, this report to council. So just show what any changes there have been, things like that. And that was about it, unless there's any questions.
I think that level of detail is good, just to see the highlight of the names that have been changed. One of the conversations that came up through the deliberations was around the spend of the extra $1 million that the community said they want to fund, and how that's going to be reported back to us as a council, and I guess back to the community as a part of that. And one of the pieces that was discussed by us was reporting around needing to spend more on road maintenance, and in the past we've sort of had overruns in that space, and I think there's an expectation from councillors that there'd be nothing spent over budget without councillors becoming aware of that. So guessing that's going to fit into this report as it comes back to us. Thank you very much for both reports. Is there any further questions anyone has? And we'll keep this one monthly. Oh, Sophie?
I was just going to say, can you pass on some thanks to the road safety team? That's a whole bunch of programs they've got going there, and it's great to see that there's also a Learn to Drive a Mentor program at Dipinawai, which is pretty cool.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Moved Gallagher. Seconded Lyle. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. The property transaction updates. Number 14. We're on page 116. Douglas, thanks for the report. Probably another one that'll stay monthly, I suggest. Thank you for the updates who've got in there. I'll hand over to you and you can run us through the report. Don't feel like councillors have read it, so we don't need to go into super detail unless there's things you want to add other than what's already in the red. Thanks.
It is very much a standard report because, but like as Andrew said, LTP's been our priority. So I think that first item is the SAC opening. I think Sandrine just sent an email just highlighting just a wee few challenges that James and his crew just got getting the water just exactly right. It will come right. It's just whether it will be good on the 28th or whether it just might be, we'll just give it a couple more days and go to the 31st. I just think, I'm sure you'll appreciate this, better to have the water tip top than a sort of slight niggle or issue with it. Have you perchance had a chance to walk down and have a look at the new pool complex yet? We must organise that, Councillor Lemon. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah, it's
Not
really,
since it's been filled.
it's really great. So a couple of reports here on Te Ara Hatia, just construction issues. We're proceeding well. The program's got a few challenges just to meet where we are at 24th of August for sort of closure and getting ready for the fit out process. But Armitage and the team down there are focused and working hard. You'll certainly see the landscaped areas outside are coming along, and Phil Miller and his team are just keep advancing the landscaping process. So it's all starting to come together. Selwyn Sports Centre. So I think we're all wrapped with how that's working, and Dave Tippett and his team there have got that centre humming. The property team are having a few issues with a very minor issue, which is all about toilet doors correctly locking and us getting called out at odd times of the night to come and think about what we do with it. But that's just a teething issue. We'll get that sorted. Responsible camping.
Sorry, Douglas, on that one, and it may be more Denise than yourself, just thinking about a review of the first 6 months of the facility and just thinking about how we capture how things are going, feedback from the community, understanding how staff are operating in that space. It's a new place for us to operate at this sort of scale, so just keen to know what the review process looks like. Denise?
Just feedback. Council will get a presentation at the June council meeting on the usage to date and some of the feedback to date as well.
I was going to say, we're taking questions as we go away into the end, because I've got some questions as we go. On Te Ara Atea, I've had some anecdotal feedback about businesses across the road picking up some glare from the louvers. Have you had any of that feedback to you?
No.
Well, I was surprised because I thought the louvers were actually, the way they were angled, it would reduce the glare, but you might just pay somebody just to stop on there and have a chat to the business to see if there is an issue, or it's just a perception that there might be.
I mean, there's still a bit more of the facade to be attached yet, so I think I can do that. You know which businesses it was?
On the Selwyn Sports Centre, you note that it's...
Sorry, Councillor Alexander, which business in Tennyson Street do I need to go and see?
Goes,
okay. Thank you.
That's the feedback I've had. I'd like to suggest that there shouldn't be a final report until the defects period is over. Just to know that, so we can monitor whether there has been any in that 12-month period. It doesn't have to be updated, but until the defects period is over, I'm interested in finding that. And also on the sports centre, I've had some feedback that the public toilets are only open, the outside public toilets are only open while the building is staffed, which kind of defeats the purpose of having public toilets if it's only open while the building's open. Is that correct?
It is correct. We close them at 10 and they get opened by Maglock again at 6. There is one public toilet open down at the Dines Road end. We get vandalism in Rolleston on our public toilets, and with this building, I don't think we should be providing a public toilet service when the best of the building won't be compromised, but it could be. What I do need to check though, we were looking at putting signage just directing people to that. I know if you're in a bit of a hurry and you find that you've got to go another 500 metres around the block, I appreciate that's a bit tricky, but at this stage we don't believe we should open those towards
I thank you. The hours that you've suggested are somewhat larger than had been suggested to me, so I haven't had a chance to follow it up prior to today. I think those aren't unreasonable times that I'll feed back to the people that raised it, that it's actually 6 a.m. to 10 p.m, because that kind of meets their expectation, particularly around SIPTED and lighting of the facility park anyway.
Just wondering, councillors, the report that we're receiving is on some of the major items in the strategic direction of the report. If there's further items that you need feedback to staff or things that you'd like to raise, could I just ask that that be done via email or offline, or we ask people to use SnapSend Solve to capture things rather than using council meetings for that purpose. So thanks for raising those as you have, Mark. That's probably what we've done in the past. I just think we should think to change our ways a wee bit and lift the helicopter. Douglas.
Thank you. Sports Centre, so Mrs. Kidd, myself, and the key staff involved, Dave Tippett, James Richmond and Sundering Carrara, we sat down and had a navel gazing exercise at the build process for Selwyn Sports Centre. We've made a list of issues. We just want to make sure as we do other builds in the future that we don't repeat. I think the key one was just getting it's probably a documented statement about where responsibilities lie for certain design decisions and that type of thing. We generally have very good notes and minutes and all that type of thing, and you can follow these things through, but we just think a sort of a one-pager would help us as staff to make sure we get that relationship as tidy as we can. So yeah, that's one thing we've done. Okay, so just, is there any interest? I hear what Councillor Alexander's saying, but we could report on those issues through the operational reports of the Community Service Facilities team. I think it's probably more efficient every time. Okay, responsible camping. We've made our application to TIFF there. I just have to say, if we're successful, that'll be great, but they were pretty clear they want to support the West Coast, Aoraki and Fiordland, so if we manage to succeed, that would be good. The rest of the items are really linked to LTP decisions, so we've obviously made those. We'll move forward. The Kerwee one, I don't think we've had an update yet on the costing of that seismic issue we've identified there. And then the rest are just really updates on various projects that are undertaken.
That sounds good. I'm going to move through to the vehicle fleet then. If there's no particular questions on anything earlier, it's on page 125, just because that's something new for us today.
So we just provided you some core information on our fleet, as you see there, and I've just made some notes around how we see the replacement program working through. Certainly, I suppose, just to be clear, we see we will just work the utes out of our fleet in a measured basis. We're not looking to necessarily accelerate them. So, I mean, if you wish to have a different view on that, then you should let us know so we can start planning for that. But we are also vehicles. We just think we can get a better. 200,000 K is not an old vehicle nowadays, and we think we can run them appropriately. It does mean our previous 5-year rule, we're not following that, because we just think we might as well just make the asset work a bit longer and get better use of it out of it. I mean, there's only about 5 of our vehicle drivers who would do anywhere near 40 to 50,000 K a year, and they're the money, the roadie contractors and the reserve contractors. So you can see that most of our vehicle fleet use is quite low.
I think one of my feedback there is the cost that we're able to purchase vehicles at, particularly utes, after 5 years probably matches the market. We're not losing money on our utes even after 4 or 5 years worth of use. And so thinking about how we move, I don't think it's necessarily cost related. It's kind of direction and where the council wants to sit with climate change particularly, but thinking about the availability of vehicles that match the demands that our council has. And I would like to see us be more adventurous than just as they wear out, and think that over the next 3 to 5 years, we would have, we would make that transition away from petrol and diesel carbon powered vehicles where appropriate alternatives are available. So that's not going to mean that everything is there, and today's not the day necessarily to make that decision, but I think if we've given you well, hopefully we've given staff some direction that this is the way councillors feel about making a change. We don't want to force a change where there's no available alternative, and we're going to leave staff unable to do the job that we're employing them to do. But where there are those alternatives, we should be leading that move. It can't all be done in 12 months, probably can be done in 3. I'd be able to listen to arguments around why it might take 5, but keen to hear from others, councillors, how they might feel about that. Sophie, Mark and Jeff.
Kira Douglas, just want to, you've answered one of my questions, which was looking at the types of vehicle we've got rather than just, so that's pretty cool. And if you want to support what you just said there, Sam, looking forward to seeing you turning up in a Leaf. Or something, I don't know, sorry, being flippant there. Yeah, there you go. Who knows? I guess my other question was possibly more of a question for the IT section, Kelvin, because I know that sometimes we do have staff who are going to the same event and they take separate vehicles, and just wondering whether there's any chance of developing some kind of in-house, because the IT staff have done a great job at working out various databases and everything recently. Just wondering if there's some kind of board that could be created to work out who's going to the same place, or whether it can fit in with the diary system somehow. I got no idea. I know it's probably quite complicated, but just thinking, wider, if we could manage to get one that works within a little ecosystem of within the council, then it would be great to try and roll out a bit further to the rest of the area.
The easiest solution to that is communication. It's not a system.
Yeah, no, I support what you've said, Sam. I remember asking this question, well, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, how do we work out what type of vehicles we need in our fleet? And it was soundly the ones that we were buying, which were generally twin cab utes, we could get a good price back for, and it seemed that our philosophy was that we didn't lose money over a period of X amount of years, and that was reasonable, I suppose. But I think in today's climate, no pun intended, that we need to think a little bit better than that, more strategically, and say, what type of vehicle do we want? Not worry too much about it, the end product, but I think you just have to look at pollution, and a small vehicle that's just not pushing out a whole lot of fumes is probably better than a large vehicle, because we're going to get our money back for it at the end of the day. But maybe we need to have a real sit down and think about how many vehicles we actually do need. Are there better ways of sharing them out? Maybe something, a paper back to the council on that would be really efficient, addressing a number of issues to do with transport.
It's a pertinent question, and the key information is the summary of the fleet size. So the exercise that we're doing internally at the moment is understanding why we need the number of vehicles, and secondly the purpose of those vehicles, and thirdly the terrain and the distance and the time that people are using them.
Thank you. It's useful to have a summary, but it would have been useful to have sort of the turnover of those, an estimate of that as well. So how many utes are we turning over a year, cars, vans? What's not on that list that I thought might have been on the list, and I thought other councillors might have picked up, is electric bikes or scooters. Because if you're going from here to the sports centre or the aquatic centre, Te Ara Atea or Rolleston Community Centre, they would be mostly perfectly acceptable transportation options. And finally, your replacement program, you note that it's a likely objective is to remove those vehicles using diesel. I'd actually suggest a better criteria is to remove those who use the most fuel, who have the biggest carbon footprint. They may well be diesels, but they might not just be diesels. We might have a small, very fuel efficient diesel that, while it's diesel, is actually better than some of its other hydrocarbon powered vehicles. So, fuel efficiency should be high on the criteria, because along with its suitability for use, because there are some very fuel efficient petrol cars that when you start comparing costs of using versus EVs, it starts to get very close. So it's that kind of the carbon footprint type issue rather than just picking on the portable diesel vehicle.
Just a reminder to everybody that we have at least a couple of years had a fleet of 3 electric bikes, which anybody's very welcome to use, and we also encourage staff wherever possible going into the city for a meeting to take the express bus from the site now that you can actually use your laptop on the bus as well.
Yep, just quickly, Douglas, from your report here in the forecast, do we need that many vehicles? Are we currently happy with the amount of vehicles we have, and do we?
Yeah, I don't want to sound to be contrite here, but efficiency of fleet is something we do look regularly at. In the peak of summer, our fleet can be all out, everything's out, and we're scrambling to get extra vehicles out. We keep a little pool of civil defence vehicles, and we bring those back over, particularly when we bring, particularly students and so forth on. So winter, it does close down, and there are vehicles that sit in our fleet. I mean, one vehicle that you could say we don't need is the minivan. The minivan goes out some weeks, no time. Other weeks, it's out every day. But it's that flexibility of the minibus, we've all driven in it, which helps with the fleet. So, we could conduct a long exercise, and we have done this a couple of times just to see if we can get rid of 2 or 3 extra vehicles. At the end of the day, what you find is you compromise somewhere else with having enough vehicles at the right time to do your work. There was one other issue just going to comment on. A good point about staff. Kelvin's answered that. Just remember, at times staff might be coming from different jobs to the one event, so they haven't come from the same spot. So just don't assume they all hopped in the car park at Rolleston and drove. And I know you'll appreciate that, but that does happen from time to time. I think as we go forward, we will try and see how many vehicles we do or don't need. But as our staff numbers increase, we haven't generally lifted our fleet numbers. So I think we are becoming slightly more efficient. I think probably the big thing which is of interest here is the average vehicles travel a year is not perhaps that high, but as I say, there's a number of high use and then there's a number of quite low use. So it's just a matter of whether we can winkle some of those out of the fleet and just get our number down a wee bit. But it's an ongoing job.
Thanks for what you've reported there, Douglas. I think what the discussion is focused on is around policy. And so David's taken on board some notes, and it'll form part of any policy review in this space. And take on board your comments, Sophie, and we'll look to replace the Tucson with a Kona as soon as possible. That brings us to the end of that report. Is there anything else councillors wanted to raise before we move into public excluded? No. So mover and seconder for the report, Alexander and Bland. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Are the same two happy to move that we move into PX? Alexander and Bland. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried, and we'll adjourn the meeting and begin again at